Welcome to another edition of the Bible Book by Book videocast. This is a special one because I want to just talk about the Christmas story for a moment. Now, the story that we have in the traditional scene actually comes from the school play rather than from the Bible. And a long time ago, they wanted to create the Nativity Scene that the children could act out, but there wasn't enough parts. So they would add in extra characters so that all the children had something to do. You know, the innkeeper was all added in. And if we were to actually look at what the Bible tells us about the Christmas story, it is pretty sparse. So people have added things in to try and make it grander or try to explain parts. But actually it's quite a simple story. Most people believe, or would believe, that Jesus was born in a stable, in a manger. That primarily comes from the Christmas play that they performed when they were at school. But the Bible actually tells us a slightly different story. Some people might say that Jesus was born actually in a cave where the animals were kept out the back of a pub somewhere. They knocked on the pub's door, there was no room in the inn, so they go and stay in the cave out back where the animals were. That actually isn't my belief at all. And this is my personal reading of this story, and I'd love to just kind of share it with you. Because if we were to look at Luke chapter 2, we see a slightly different narrative. My argument is this: I believe Jesus was born into a family home. I believe that Jesus was born into a home where there was a loving family around them. They weren't abandoned out back in some random stable or some random cave. How do I get that? Well, we're told in Luke chapter 2 that Caesar Augustus had decreed that there would be a census and that everybody had to go back to their family towns to register. So Joseph is going back to his family town. What do we know about censuses? Censuses implied that there had to be at least 2 generations living in that town or village for you to go back to. So there had to be some family there for them to go back to. And then in verse 6 of Luke 2, it says this: while they were there. Often the story is told that they arrive on Christmas Eve, or unbeknownst to them it was Christmas Eve, but they arrived, and it was that night that Mary gave birth, and Joseph's knocking on doors trying to find somewhere to stay. Luke tells us a slightly different story. The Bible says, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. They'd been there some while. The Greek implies that they'd been there for a period of time. They were staying in Bethlehem, and whilst they were in Bethlehem for the census, at that period of time, Mary gives birth. Well, where does she give birth? Well, the story goes on. The baby was to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no room in we don't want to say in. Actually, this translation of the Bible, NIV, does say in. The King James Bible does not say in. It would translate it as guest house or guest room. I actually think that's a good translation of the word. Why do I say that? Well, this word katalumai, which we find here, we've translated as in at this point. In Luke chapter 22, verse 11, Jesus says to his disciples, go to the katalumai where you will prepare for the Passover feast. And there it's translated as guest room or guest house. Well, you could say, well, surely it can be translated in 2 different ways. Well, actually, the word in also appears properly in the Gospel of Luke. You may know the story of the Good Samaritan. And the Samaritan takes the man injured in the road and he takes him off to a place that's, in the Greek, is a pankion. And we would translate that as inn, or it does translate as in the passage. An inn is like a B&B. It's a place that you may stay the night, but you pay for it. A guest room or a guest house isn't a place that you would pay. I want to tell you that the traditional home in Bethlehem at that time was a 2-story property. Imagine a garage with a house on top, a flat on top. As you would go in, there'd be a courtroom, a courtyard. There'd be stairs or a ladder up to this other floor where people would sleep. That's where the family stayed. Downstairs was where the kitchen and the cooking was, and it was where the animals would stay in winter. Imagine it was cold at night, so bringing your animals in, they would provide heat for the home. They would also poo, that would produce heat, but that poo would be great to put on the fire, and it'd be great for cooking with, because it would actually burn really hot. It's great fuel. So these family homes in Bethlehem were two-story. Now, the upstairs where the family stayed also had a katalume, a guest room or a place to stay that families could come and stay. Downstairs was where the animals would be. I take this story because there was no room in the guest room upstairs. Mary and Joseph are staying downstairs where the animals would traditionally stay. Was it dirty? Well, it was a peasant's home, so on some levels, yes, but also they were quite house pride with the peasants. They would clean this area out. It wasn't dirty like a farmyard. It was at least clean. They would bring the animals in, they'd clean it out during the day, so it was kept clean. It was their home, even though the animals were there. Now you might think that's pretty weird. Well, it is to us, but imagine having animals in your garage and then you just having a bed upstairs. That's what the homes look like. Now you might say, well, she's pregnant, so why is she staying downstairs? Why don't they let her stay upstairs? Well, a simple answer would be, well, she's pregnant and there was no room. There was other people staying there, but she's pregnant. So actually it was probably easier for her to stay downstairs. So what excites me about this understanding of the story is Jesus is born where the animals were. We're told that he was put in the manger. Well, what was the manger? In that kind of home, they would have a ledge where the straw was kept. It was a stone ledge. We still have these in archaeological digs. We find them in the region. So that's where Jesus stayed. He was in this stable kind of area downstairs, but he was born within a household. And I think this is really key. To say that Jesus was born away from a household and away from a family, actually, that would not happen in a Jewish family. Jewish families cared for their family units. So it makes more sense that he was born into a family in Bethlehem where there were relatives to look after Mary. That kind of makes much more sense for me. Does it take away or strip away the Christmas story as we know it? No, it's still important. Jesus is not born in a palace. He's still born in the home of a poor peasant family. So for me, it kind of adds depth and weight and some significance. It's dirty, it's gritty, in the same way the traditional story was, but kind of makes more sense of the culture. So I hope that makes sense to you. I'd love to hear in your comments your thoughts on that. Please do subscribe to our channel as we put up extra videos each week. I'd love you to kind of be tracking and following with us as we dig deeper into what does the Bible actually say. But I hope you enjoyed that. Bless you, grace and peace.